Hey Jane.
Hi Jean. I have no idea whether we can cut this out, but hello. I'm Jane Green. Welcome to my very first. I'm not sure if it's a podcast or a vlog, but
it is what it is.
It is what it is for Jane Green Book Club. And today I have the author of the next book, which is Admission, and it was written by Jean Hanff Korelitz. And this will come out backwards, but you can see the big A, which is one of my favourite books, and Jean is one of my favourite writers.
Thank you, Jane.
Well, and the beauty of being a novelist is that I get to meet people like you.
That's just how I feel.
Yes, and we become friends.
That's right.
Wow, which is just the loveliest treat of all.
Didn't I write you a fan letter?
Yes.
I wrote you a fan letter.
You did. You wrote me a fan letter, but then I think I wrote you a fan letter. Mm-hmm. It was sort of a mutual fan club. Mm-hmm. And then we met for Michael's film.
That's right.
We both had these little cameos in our friend Michael Maron's film.
But you had a better cameo because I got up and went to the bathroom at exactly the wrong time. When I came back, somebody else was sitting in my seat.
Also, the reason why my cameo was better, because in a sea of literary authors, and we were all in this cafe in Brooklyn, and it was every name imaginable. I mean, Gary Steingart, Jenny Egan, and I mean, everyone was there. And I was the only one
with a pink laptop.
With a pink laptop.
And not only that, you refer to it as my women's fiction.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's when I knew that we were going to be friends.
So now, did you? I want to start with Admission. How do we know where? Do you find the place? Because you're going to start off by reading to us.
Okay.
And before you start reading, can you just tell us a little bit about Admission and what it's about?
Sure. Well, I have had, in common with many, many other people, a long fascination with college admissions dating back to my own woebegone experience as a high school senior in 1979, I guess the fall of 78, in which I felt that I was in some sort of a gruesome race with every other ambitious high school senior in the country and around the world. And it was really a demoralizing process. It worked out okay for me, but I never got over it, and my curiosity about how the decisions get made, I never got over that. Many years later, I was a faculty spouse at Princeton, and I asked the Dean of Admissions if I could work for the admissions office as an outside reader. Outside readers are people the admissions office hires to provide additional readings of the applications because there are so many of them. Getting extra eyes on each application is one way to ensure that nothing slips through the cracks.
Yeah.
And it's commonly done at many universities. We were trained by the admissions office. We were told what to look for, and I read hundreds and hundreds of incredible applications from unbelievable kids, and the process by which they were winnowed down to, at this point, what is it, 6% admitted is got even more fascinating, even just being inside of it. So the novel that I wrote was about a woman who is an admissions officer at Princeton. Admissions, bizarrely, is a sort of backdrop to what's going on in her life. And there's a lot going on in her life. But that the double meaning of the word admission, as in letting something in and letting something out, became very central to the story. So it was quite different from the film that was made from it.
Right, and it was made into a wonderful film with Tina Fey and Paul Rudd. But the film is it's lovely. It's also light entertainment, which the book really isn't.
Not really, no.
Yeah, and I read the book. I've always said that what you do so extraordinarily well is you straddle the literary world and the commercial world, in that your books are beautifully written, quite quirky. Particularly, I found the new one, which is The Devil and Webster. But they're very, as somebody who now knows you very well, I think they're very, very you. And I also love recognizing so much of you in the pages. I mean,
which is not to say that they're autobiographical, because they're not.
Jamie Attenberg said recently, and I love how she put it, because when she wrote All Grown Up, everybody presumed that it was about her because it's about a single 30-something woman living in New York City. And what she eventually said was, all of it happened and none of it is true. but there were little references to Crewe at Dartmouth, and I know that you have that in your history. And what I also want to say before you read is that I chose this book not just because I love it, but because this book club, the Jane Green Book Club, is very much my goal is to bring middle-aged women particularly out from behind their screens.
That's us, the middle-aged women.
Yeah, and I think we're all sort of locked behind our screens, being quite leading much more isolated lives than we ever expected. So I'm hoping that people will not just join this virtual book club, but also gather friends. You know, get wine, gather friends.
The wine is important.
The wine's very important, and actually for me the food is very important, which we will come to.
Yes.
Why don't you read, and then we'll talk about food.
So this is, I mean, there are many encounters, uncomfortable encounters in this book between Portia, who is the protagonist, an admissions officer at Princeton, and people that she meets along the way, who all are angry at her because of some perceived slight or bias that they believe exists in Ivy League admissions. And this is a conversation that takes place at a dinner party with a woman who, having realized she's talking to an admissions officer from Princeton, goes right for the jugular and wants her questions answered and wants to know why this kid got in and this kid didn't get in. So this is how Portia responds, and most of this is what she's thinking, not what she's saying. On another occasion, she would have been more than content to lay it all out for John's sister, and in absentia, her bewildered friend Marjorie, and all the other aghast moms at the Baldwin School and every school of its ilk, from wealthy suburb to wealthy suburb, from here to far Tortuga. She would have smugly, sharply explained to Diana that the system, the much maligned system that so perplexed and offended the woman beside her, did not exist to validate her child's life, let alone her child's parents' lives. It did not exist to crown the best and the brightest, reward the hardest workers, or cast judgment on those who had not fulfilled their potential by the ripe age of 18. It certainly did not exist to congratulate those parents who had done the best parenting, pureed the most organic baby foods, wielded the most flashcards, hired the most tutors, or driven the greatest distances to the greatest number of field hockey games. The system, as far as she was concerned, was not about the applicant at all. It was about the institution. It was about delivering to the trustees, and to a lesser extent the faculty, a united nations of scholars, an Olympiad of athletes, a conservatory of artists and musicians, a great society of strivers, and a treasury of riches so idiosyncratic and ill-defined that the Office of Admission would not know how to go about looking for them, and could not hope to find them if they suddenly stopped turning up of their own accord. So get over yourself, Portia thought, through her tight, achingly tight smile, because Diana had now moved on to last year's scholarship girl, the daughter of the school janitor, who had gone off to Harvard and was a lovely, lovely girl, of course, and certainly a wonderful little flute player, but had scored over 100 points lower on the math SAT than the class salutarian, who had been rejected not only by Harvard, but by Yale, Princeton, Brown, Dartmouth, Williams, Amherst, and can you believe this, NYU? And come on, everyone knew what that meant, and how could that be fair? Well, fair, Portia said weakly. Fair is kind of an imprecise concept.
Thank you. That's lovely. What I love about this, and I had marked up another part that I was going to have you read, which was all about the essay, because that's the thing with being a middle-aged woman and having kids. Generally, we have kids who are all going off to college, and not all of us are lucky enough to have Jean as a friend that we can phone up and say, can you just have a quick look? just let me know if it's okay. And when I read this years ago, when it first came out, to me it read as a how-to. It's sort of a what not to do and
That's
a what
for
to
sure.
do. And one of the things that I really love is that you start every chapter with a sample essay, and some of them are kind of wonderful, and some of them are
Kind of not wonderful.
terrible, and
Yeah.
some of them are so hilariously cliche.
Yes.
So can I just read a couple of them? Maybe you and I can both read. This was one that I really liked. I would like to share with you something about my current medical situation. Last month I consulted with my doctor because of a digestive problem. He performed tests and I was given a diagnosis of irritable bowel syndrome, parentheses IBS. There is no cure for IBS, and I do not know what the future will hold for me, but I'm determined to face this challenge with the same determination I have faced every other challenge in my life. Which I think isn't the rule of thumb, kind of try not to focus on the disability.
I think if there, as far as the essay goes, I mean, if there is something that absolutely sheds light on your life experience, the fact that you know, are paralyzed, that you have a chronic illness that, you know, impedes upon your ability to live your life, absolutely, it's important. I mean, and I'm the daughter of a gastroenterologist. I have great respect for irritable bowel syndrome. Nothing against irritable bowel syndrome, but it really would have come under, you're really reaching here.
Yes. And this was another one of my favorites. So I'm sorry, I'm having you put your glasses on and off.
Okay.
But there is something so wonderful about hearing the words from the author herself.
Okay. I remember writing this one. I wrote all of them in like one day.
See, and I was going to ask, did you sort of not crib from any, but
no, I mean there are archetypes of these essays. I read so many essays about cooking with my grandmother, making rye bread with my grandmother, making dumplings with my grandmother, making mandelbrot with my, you know, and that's wonderful.
Yeah.
But, you know, if somebody came to me and said, I'm going to write about, you know, making, you know, Greek Christmas cake with my grandmother, I would say, don't do that. Let's think I'm on something else, because it could be the best cooking with my grandmother essay these people have ever read, but it's still going to be one of hundreds that they read that year.
And what about, I was looking for this paragraph in there because I thought you had put it in, but I couldn't find it. I reread it over the weekend. But what about the whole kind of privileged child going to Africa or wherever and
well, I mean the general
kind of realizing how lucky
we were taught in our
you
training.
Yeah.
I hate to burst everybody's bubble, but if it's something you've written a check for, don't. I mean, it is delegitimized.
Yeah.
So I mean, look, my
so
daughter went on a program to the Dominican Republic when she was in high school. She had a fascinating experience that changed the way she looked at the world. I'm glad she did it. But if she had said to me, I'm gonna write my college essay about digging a ditch in the Dominican Republic, I would have said, please don't do that.
Yeah.
No, and she wouldn't have listened to me. She would have done it anyway.
I didn't mean this to be a kind of a how-to not to do, but I think if we've got you here,
this was, I mean, I tend to joke to people that, you know, this book has the how to apply to college guidebook equivalency of about 5.
Yeah.
So, you know, go and buy 5 different books about how to apply to college, or buy this, or take it out of the library. I'm not saying buy it, but there's a lot of information in the book. You
do say a couple of times in the book that everybody who's ever worked in an admissions office then writes a book about how to.
And in fact, when I first explained, you know, to the dean of admissions and to the man that I reported to, you know, I'm here because I'm a writer and I'm fascinated by this and I want to write about it. And my advisor said to me, my supervisor said to me, you know, everybody writes a book. Why shouldn't yours be a novel?
Yeah.
And of course, we do know that fiction is only a different kind of truth. It is it is a cousin of science.
Yeah.
All right. So here is, it's not a satirical one, this person would have made me quite sympathetic because this is how I feel as well. For as long as I can remember, my most important goal has been to make my way to a great university where I could spread my academic wings and engage in intellectual exchanges with my peers. I've been thinking about this, dreaming about this, and yes, worrying about this since I first discovered what the acronym SAT stood for. Now, all these years later, I look at what I've accomplished and discover to my great concern that I am only one of thousands just like me, ambitious and well prepared for college, but not particularly outstanding in the context of your applicant pool. Of course, I wish that I had written a novel or won a Grammy or modeled for Vogue, but to be totally honest, I just don't understand the necessity of completing or even beginning my life's work at the age of 17. And the fact is, I was really busy with honors calculus.
Yeah.
Which is completely understandable.
And you know what's lovely about all of the essays at the beginning of the chapters is that, satirical or not, they're all written in what feels like a very authentic voice for a 17-year-old. And you know, I was just talking to a great friend of mine whose daughter is with one of these educational consultants who, you know, I guess supposed to help her with choosing the college and writing the essay. And my friend her daughter's been tutored and she's done the essay and she gave it to her mother, and her mother said, "This is wonderful, it's beautifully written. What does diffident mean?" And her daughter said, "I have no idea." Yeah, and what's lovely is that there is nothing pretentious in any. These are really, you know, you feel like you're reading essays that are appropriate for a 17-year-old.
Wasn't there one in there about that was, I tried to put in as many cliches as possible. It was one of the sports one where, you know, we'll never leave a teammate behind, and, you know, we go big or we go home.
Yes. And then there's also another one which is sort of incredibly clever, like, well, it's 22 minutes before midnight on the before the deadline of when I have to get my application in, and you know, what can I say that's clever enough? So we have to just take a little diversion to discuss food.
Okay, let's do it.
Because one of the other goals for me with this book club is that you know, obviously as a cook and having written the cookbook, I want to recommend food that's kind of easy and delicious. And every time I pick up a novel that I've chosen for this book club, I'm praying that there's going to be a food element. And I'm going through your book and I'm thinking, oh yeah, we could do tea. And then I saw something about Pillsbury dough, which I thought was really funny. So Portia says, she's terrific, Martha's niece, Princeton graduate and math teacher at Northfield, had attended her session that morning. She said to give you a big hug and remind you that you promised her Pillsbury crescents on Thanksgiving.
Ah, yes.
I assume this is some kind of secret code because I know you wouldn't be caught dead serving Pillsbury crescents. So of course I started thinking, well, first of all, I don't even know what Pillsbury crescents are.
Oh, sure you do.
No, I don't. I've only been here for 17 years and I'm very posh. No, I'm kidding. But actually, I really didn't know. So I went out and bought some Pillsbury crescents.
And then you made them gourmet?
Well, and then I thought, what could we do with these that would make them really delicious, especially for a book club? Now, why don't you come a bit closer, because it's all about me and it shouldn't be. Not today, anyway.
Okay.
And I thought, what can I do that makes them really delicious? And I'm going to post these recipes. So I have one of them I filled with prosciutto, mozzarella cheese and pesto. Another one is with a curried chicken and spinach filling. And another one is a spiced onion and ricotta filling, but that's too spicy for you.
For me.
Yeah. And then...
But the two I ate were so good.
Yes, well, they're quite delicious. And then as I leafed through the book, I suddenly thought, oh my God, there's a whole chapter
called Chicken Marbella.
Chicken Marbella. Chicken Marbella was one of the breakout hits of the Silver Palette cookbook.
Which itself was a breakout hit of the...
In when? The 70s? Late 70s or 80s?
It came out in the 80s. And it really was the first cookbook that I ever used.
Yeah.
It made me feel like I could cook.
Yes, and chicken marbella is something that everyone can cook. It's totally foolproof.
It is the dish of my generation.
This is it, if you can see. So it's one pot, and you marinate in oil and vinegar and oregano, capers, olives, prunes.
It's hard to destroy this dish.
Yeah, you can't.
It's very forgiving.
Why is it called chicken marbella and not chicken marbella?
All I know is, I remember the description in the Silver Palette cookbook, and it was, Silver Palette started as a little storefront on the Upper West Side in the 70s, and chicken marbella, at that time, takeout was pizza or Chinese, that was it.
Yeah.
And the idea of picking up a prepared food and taking it home with you at the end of the day was also unheard of. It was very, very new. And they were among the first people to do that in a kind of gourmet way.
Yeah.
So they had various prepared foods, and right from the get-go, chicken marbella was the star.
Right.
So it became the centerpiece of their brand.
Yes. By the way, I see Jean looking over my shoulder because we have Tom, the electrician. Yeah, go on, you can go downstairs, it's fine. Cat? Oh, okay, thank you. So this was meant to be our very peaceful day, just Jean and I in the house, but last night was the night of the massive windstorm, so it's chaos. There's no school today, so there are children everywhere.
Oh, is that why all the kids are home?
Yeah, kids are all home because there's no school, and I actually cooked chicken. Chicken marbella is supposed to be baked, but because I have no stove, I
See,
have
and
gas.
it's so forgiving, it doesn't even
Yeah,
matter.
it doesn't matter. Oh, and the other thing I was going to make that I couldn't because I have no stove are, can't remember how to pronounce it, the Christmas cookies.
Oh, yes.
Zimstern?
Yes.
German Christmas
Yes.
cookies. Zimstern, I think they are.
Somebody, I believe I was having a conversation with another admissions, or with an admissions officer, because I was not technically an admissions officer, about this grandmother cooking thing, and I asked this woman if she remembered any, and she remembered one with this cookie, so I immediately wrote that down.
Yeah.
But I just want to say about chicken marbella that by admission, I realized that I had already put chicken marbella in 2 books. So I decided chicken marbella was going to appear in every single one of my books. And in fact, it's like that British filmmaker who they call his work the Cornetto trilogy, because there's a Cornetto ice cream cone somewhere.
I did not know.
I think it's Edgar Wright.
Okay.
There's always a Cornetto somewhere.
Yeah.
So this is my Cornetto.
Oh.
Chicken marbella appears so far in my last 4 books somewhere. And in my last book, you should have known, the last one before the current one, I actually, for some reason, I don't even know why I did this. I added some weird thing to the recipe. I didn't even try it. I just put it in. I think I added a spoonful of, rice wine vinegar. And I started hearing from people who had added that and congratulated me on making it even better.
Oh.
And I don't know why I did it. I have yet to try the rice wine vinegar.
I'm sure
it'll be great.
Yeah, I in fact did not have any red wine vinegar, so I used white wine vinegar, and there was something else I substituted. I didn't have any oregano, so I put in rosemary instead. I'm very much, I believe in that. You sort of work with what you've got, and then pray.
I think if you have the capers, the olives, and the prunes, and the chicken,
that's
and
really
garlic,
what you need.
you're really home free with this dish.
Yeah. Now, you are one of the incredibly fortunate authors to have had a book made into a film, and it's one of those things that when you've had it done and it happens very easily, you sort of take it for granted.
Oh, was that easy?
Yes.
I don't remember
it was very easy. That phone call saying, "Oh, Tina Fey has your book and loves it and wants to make it a movie." That's easy.
Nice.
And the rest of us spend 20 years
in development hell.
in kind of optioning and then nothing happening. How was that? What I'm interested in is that so often you hear writers say they were terribly disappointed with the film, and I've only ever heard you say something, wonderful things, despite the film being very different from the book.
Well, it was a wonderful experience. They were extremely kind to me, and I think that's because there was a very pro-writer vibe with this project. The director, Paul Weitz, is a playwright. Tina Fey is a writer. Lily Tomlin is a writer. There was just respect on the set, which I gather is not normal. And when I said, can I come to the set? No problem. Can I bring my parents? No problem. They gave my son a line.
Yeah.
His line was, wait for it, woo! That was his line. It's great. Highlight
Does
of the movie.
that count as a line or a
Well,
word?
there was some debate about that, but we
Yeah.
actually never pursued it in terms of, a SAG card. But they were so good to me, and I kept thinking, if I didn't know the story, if I didn't know this book, and I just came to this movie without knowing anything, would I like this film? And the answer was always yes.
Yeah.
The only conflict came when I began to think about how else it might have been done. But one of the really nice things that came out of the film for me was I became friends with the screenwriter. We're still friends. We're still in touch, and that was a very nice thing. We actually did a little magazine article together about the experience of, working on this project. We weren't technically working together, but as women of the same age, and both feminists and both writers, she had some trepidation about the directions in which she took the story.
Yeah.
And I had some trepidations about the direction she was taking the story. So, but it worked out, and I'm still very appreciative of all the nice things that happened.
I wonder as well whether that's something to do with ego, and the longer that you are in this business, the more humility you have, and the more you realize that it's okay to let other incredibly talented people do different things with your work, rather than, I think often early on we cling to our words. What, but those are my words.
Precious
Yes,
words.
how
How dare you
become-
even consider changing that comma to a period?
Whereas I think, after a while, you recognise that when talented people come along,
that's the key.
yeah, and see well, that's it. It's trust. You have to feel good about the people who.
Well, many years ago, it was the first time I ever met Meg Wolitzer. I mean, we're now friends, but this was 25 years ago. I met her, and I had just seen the film adaptation, Nora Ephron's film adaptation of her novel, This Is Your Life, which was made into the Nora Ephron film, This Is My Life.
Yeah.
And the book, which I read everything by Meg Wolitzer, was about two sisters, one fat, one thin.
Yeah.
And the
child.
and the film was called This Is My Life, and it was about the mother of the two kids. So I said, what was that like to see your book, which was very much about sisters and weight and all of this stuff, turn into this thing about how this mother becomes a comedian. And she sort of took a deep cleansing breath, and she said it was a variation on a theme.
Yeah.
And I always remember that because that's what Admission was. It was a variation on a theme.
Yeah. I had recently the script sent over for The Beach House, which is becoming a feature.
Yay!
Apparently. Well, we shall see. But they sent this script over, and it was really fascinating because it was also quite different. There were characters that I hadn't created, and one of the storylines had to be sort of spun out in a slightly different way. And I loved it. I have to say, I just got such delight somehow for me, reading about them on the page just brought the characters to life in a way that I haven't been able to do when I just imagined them in my head.
It's definitely a different skill set than we have.
Yeah.
We have, both of us write about, the internal lives of our characters. And we're not aiming a camera at our characters and watching them move around. We're in their heads.
Yeah.
So it is a different experience.
Yeah.
But I would cultivate this letting go now.
Yes.
Because it's only going to get worse.
Well, please, God, may it get worse. Please, God, may there be many more opportunities for me to let go of the work. I also I don't want to talk too much about Admission because I think everybody's going to be able to ask you live on a Facebook video. What date did we say? December the 14th, I think it was.
I'll look it
Okay.
up.
We will make sure that nobody misses it, everybody knows. But I want to just ask you about Book the Writer, because that's something else that's fascinating that you do.
Well, Book the Writer is a business, a company that I started in New York about 3 years ago, and the idea is that we represent about 100 authors who are mainly based in New York. Some are just frequently in New York. And they are available to visit book groups in and around the city. And I would say, well, that certainly includes near Connecticut, Westchester, New Jersey, Long Island, and all 5 boroughs, of course. We send authors to book groups, and we have, as I said, 100 authors. They're novelists, memoirists, food writers, comedy writers, biographers, nonfiction writers, all sorts of really great people. But we also have this thing called the pop-up book group. And in that case, well, you've done a pop-up book group, so we said, okay, we're doing Jane Green's novel Falling on the 5th of September, and you go to Eventbrite and you register for it, and there's a small fee, I think it's $30, and you are asked to buy the book, read the book, and then we tell you where to go, and it's usually somebody's apartment in Manhattan, and you get a nice glass of wine, and there's Jane Green, and you and about 15, 16 other people get to really have the kind of conversation about the book and other books and writing that you can't get when you go hear Jane Green at Barnes and Noble.
And is that bookthewriter.com?
Bookthewriter.com, and there's a link there to our pop-up book groups, which are on Eventbrite also. So if you go to Eventbrite and you search for Book the Writer, which is all one word.
And when you say tri-state area, I do remember a phone call from you a couple of years ago saying, you've got a request for booking in Vermont.
Oh, that's
it
right.
was Vermont, wasn't it? And it wasn't just Vermont, it was like the furthest reaches of Vermont. I think it was almost Canada.
No, it wasn't. You just remember it that way.
It was somewhat hilarious because
Yes.
it was this adorable little library, but it
Yes.
was this tiny library, and you and I
But you were
went
busy
there.
camp visiting, right?
Well, no, I was supposed
I
to be
see.
on a
That was
writing
very
retreat,
good of you.
but then I cancelled because I was abandoning the book, and so I drove up anyway. But it was
Yeah.
lovely, and what I do remember is there are a few people there that were just, they could not believe that I had showed up to this
Yeah.
tiny
Yeah.
little village,
Yeah.
and from what I have to say, neither could I.
Well, okay, so when I say tri-state, I mean tri-state unless it's Jane Green. You'll go anywhere.
Oh, I will
Or,
clearly go
there
anywhere.
are, I have authors who, who don't live in New York. They have apartments in New York, and they're mainly somewhere else. If it's somewhere else,
Yeah, and then last thing is because you are always busy. You're a real doer,
Which
and
is a good thing.
it's a great thing.
Better than the alternative.
Yeah. But tell us about The Dead.
Ooh, The Dead.
Yeah.
Well, The Dead, as of course everybody out there knows, is the most famous short story in the English language. It's by James Joyce, and it's considered by many people to be the greatest short story ever written. It's been filmed. It was made into a film by John Huston. It was his last film starring his daughter, Angelica Huston. It was a wonderful film. It's been a Broadway musical, but a couple years ago I had this crazy idea that it should be done as an immersive theater piece. In other words, in which the audience is not sitting in a chair watching a stage, but is actually moving around with the actors all around them, because most of the story takes place at a party. The party's is taking place in Dublin on January 6, 1904, the Feast of the Epiphany, 1904. And what better reason to have something be an immersive theater piece than it's at a party and the audience are at the party. In the middle of the play, everybody sits down and eats this amazing meal, which is interpreted from the food in the story by a wonderful caterer in New York, great performances, and the food is to die for. The food is so good. And we serve everything on vintage plates and antique china and antique silverware, and we really make it a Victorian meal. And the setting is this gorgeous 1900 mansion on the Upper East Side. So the audience arrives, they're in the party, the actors are acting all around them, they're watching the story unfold. It's dinner time, we all go in and eat dinner, and then at the very end we follow the two main characters upstairs to their bedroom, where all hell breaks loose basically. The husband has a complete existential crisis as the snow falls gently outside. The snow does fall every night. It is very expensive snow, and it falls every night.
Yeah.
And it really was special. We did it last year for 50 performances. It sold out completely before opening night. And we're about to do it again. Yeah. And our new leading lady, have I told you the new leading lady?
I do know. I know exactly who it is.
It's Melissa Gilbert from
Little House on the Prairie.
And she's fantastic.
Yeah.
And so performances start November 18th. And they run through January 7th, which is the day after the date on which the story is set.
Right.
And there are only 57 people per performance. Right. That's the whole audience. And it's going to be great.
I think it'll become a Christmas tradition. I came last year, and what is so magical is that you walk into this exquisite mansion, which is, it feels like you're stepping back in time, and you have this wonderful, huge Christmas tree, and there's a Victorian maid standing there greeting you with a tray of drinks.
That's Lily.
And you move around from room to room with the characters, and it's really just an extraordinary thing. So thank you for that. Thank you for admission. I'm so excited that I can share this book with people who haven't yet read it.
Thank you. And of course, we're just, I've just gone through the process, and you're just going through it now. So it's
with the movie,
with college admissions.
Oh, with college admissions.
Oh, remember that?
Oh yes. But this was helpful. This was really helpful, and I think what was most helpful for me is by the end of the book you realise that the colleges want to see who you are, and it's not about the charity work you've done or how you've overcome difficulties. It's really and I sort of work backwards. When Harry and I, my son, sat down to think about the admissions process and what he might do for an essay, we kind of started by thinking, okay, never mind what the essay is going to be about. What would you want the college to know about you? What makes you you? What is the essence of you? And where does that come from? And how do you write that?
And is that how you ended up starting it the way you did?
No, actually that was after a false start. That was after the first essay, which was, interestingly, a very, perfectly well written essay, but it felt to me like it could have been one of the essays at the beginning of the chapters. It was one of the satirical ones, which is not what you want.
As a writer, sometimes you have to write the bad one to get it out of the way to write the good one.
I mean, it was great, but it was generic, and I could see that this was going to be one of 5 million essays just like it. So, Thank you for joining us, and now we can get back to our chicken marbella.
Yes.
Bon appetit.
Bon appetit. You may eat.
Yes. Oh, lovely. I think that was lovely.